Thank you. Mr. Speaker, we learned late this afternoon that the Republican leadership of this House has derailed the important appropriation bills to fund the government of the United States for the fiscal year that actually began October 1st. So it's been delayed for months and months, and now today, with legislation ready to move, again, the Republican leadership has failed the people of the United States. Why did they do this? The incoming administration, that has not been sworn in yet, called and asked them to shelve the funding of the government of the United States for the fiscal year of 2025, which, as I say, began on October 1st. Now, why did they do that? All the members were here on both sides of the aisle. We were ready to vote. We'd done the work. I serve on the Appropriations Committee. We've worked for well over a year to put 12 bills together that should have been presented to this chamber one at a time, starting back last June. Well, they say they want to talk. They want to talk with Congress about the debt ceiling. Surely, this is a joke. Here are the facts, and here is a great chart. Numbers don't lie. The President-elect Trump, in his last term, had tax cuts passed to millionaires and billionaires that has already added $2 trillion to the over $30 trillion U.S. debt. We're going to add up numbers tonight, simple numbers. So $2 trillion from the first term, and that adds up even more every year. There's more to come, folks. The tax cuts provided by a predecessor of his, George Bush II, those tax cuts have already added $8 trillion to the U.S. debt. Those benefits went to billionaires again and millionaires, not to the middle class or working people. And there's more debt to come because those tax cuts haven't expired. So just with the past Trump administration and the Bush II tax cuts, we're talking about almost a third of the accumulated debt of the country, and that number's right up here. $36 trillion in U.S. debt. Interesting where it's coming from. Bush II, his wars added another $8 trillion as part of that $36 trillion in military spending to the debt, but it wasn't paid for. Okay? Just these three Republican gouges of the federal purse total $18 trillion of the $30 trillion. That's accumulated debt on the current generation and future generations. But it's not over. Republicans again cuddled up to Wall Street, causing the horrid recession of 2008. That cost a minimum of $3 trillion more of the $36 trillion to bail out America where it could be bailed out. That was a total disaster, that recession. The average African-American citizen of our country who owned a home, they lost half their accumulated wealth because so many families lost their dwellings. If you were Hispanic American, you lost about 30% of those folks lost their homes. And the rest of the country, about 20% of their accumulated wealth. That was a horrible, horrible, horrible meltdown of the economy, but again, added $3 trillion to the accumulated debt. Now we hear one of the people on the phone to the leadership of this House, Elon Musk, the richest man in the world, is trying to strangle the U.S. government, in other words, not pass the appropriation bills, to grow his monopoly power. He already has contracts from the Department of Defense, from NASA, and what is he interested in doing? Even gaining more control over the production of three things: electric vehicles, space-based communication, and commercial and military rockets. How much is he going to add to the accumulated debt? Folks, this is not a pretty picture. The middle class and working people of this country have to stand up to these billionaires and millionaires strangling the U.S. Treasury and causing raids in the future on the accumulated wealth of the American people, particularly in our Social Security and Medicare accounts, the food and agricultural programs which are being held up because this body is being held back by people who haven't been sworn in yet from doing its job. Environmental cleanup? Forget about that. There's not going to be money for that. And so many critical programs to the working people of the United States. So numbers don't lie. Forget politics. Just look at the raw figures. We have a lot of accounting to do in this chamber to the American people for the chaos attending those that hold the gavel. And they better bring that bill to the floor tomorrow. The American people have been waiting for far too long. And frankly, they shouldn't be paid. If you can't bring the bill to the floor, you shouldn't be paid.